So do you guys remember radio theater? I mean, not like you were born in those days, but just how romantic it must have been and how you could just sit in your bathtub. You don't have to watch TV. You could just imagine the characters in your head and be relaxed and have a story told to you while all the actors were in the studio trying to put on the best show they possibly could with all the characters they had to do. And then you'd knit by the radio, or you'd come together and you'd look at the scripts, and it just seemed so alive back then. So when I was asked to host live radio theater about one of my favorite inventors of all time, Tesla, I said yes, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Just sit back, relax, and this is my gift to you.
The following dramatization has been modified to fit your audio speaker. Any similarities beyond the facts to places, things, or persons, living or dead, is a coincidence not intended.
It's showtime! Every Now and Then Theater with Conejo Players Theater presents Nikola Tesla, Mysterious Genius. I am your radio host, Rachel Reenstra, comedian and TV show host of the nationally acclaimed 4-time Emmy-nominated The Wildlife Docs. Nikola Tesla lived from 1856 to 1943. Now, in childhood, some thought he was delusional or mad. Later, many would label him an eccentric, wizard, and finally, father of electricity. Nearly forgotten, now rediscovered, Tesla is responsible for many inventions that now we take for granted, including your ability to hear my voice right now. Join us for Act 1, Early Sparks of Genius.
In there! We know you're in there! Unlock that door now!
Who are you? What do you want?
We are the United States government! We demand you unlock this door now!
How do I know you're really...
What the... Who are you guys? What do you want?
Under the authority of the United States Department of Justice, Alien Property, Custodian Office, everything in this workshop is impounded.
You're who? Under what? Alien property? These files, boxes, and apparatuses are private property. You can't just barge in here unannounced and take stuff without permission. How rude!
Yeah, rude. We don't spend a dime on PR. Okay, make it fast. Check the room. Grab the boxes. Collect anything he wrote. Take pictures of his notes on that wall. Then wash the wall. I'll empty his safe.
You know his combination?
I don't need any stinking combination. There. Bag it all. Looks like we got here first, thank God. Let's get out of here.
I hear others coming. Let's go now.
Dear Sir, your letter of November 27th has been received. In response to your inquiry as director of the FBI, I would like to point out that the effects of Dr. Nikola Tesla were impounded after his death by the Office of Alien Property of the Department of Justice and not by the FBI. I'm unable to supply the information you desire. Sincerely yours, J. Edgar Hoover, Director.
Now, Hoover's letter just added a little more mystery to the already mysterious inventor, Nikola Tesla. At the time, Hoover, let's say, fibbed a bit. Actually, the FBI had a lengthy file on Tesla and kept close tabs on his whereabouts. Having died at the height of World War II, Tesla, being Serbian-born, was known to have had connections regarding his inventions with arms dealers in rival foreign countries. Now, this, of course, made him highly suspect to the U.S. government, especially since Tesla was prone to frequent bragging about his secret weapons that could actually end the war. Just who was this mysterious genius who was responsible for so many of today's inventions that we now take for granted? Well, it all began with a lightning storm. The year is 1856. The place, a small village in the Austrian Empire. It's almost midnight. We're inside a pastor's tiny home next to a small rural church.
Oh my! Lightning hurts my eyes. How bright it lights up this room. My goodness! Right on the strokes of midnight. Your new son is a child of the storm.
No, he is a child of the light. Oh, the storm helps distract from my labor.
Now a father of 5 children, our Serbian family was quite poor, living on my meager pastor's salary. There was Nikola, his 3 sisters, and older brother Dane, the smart one. Back then, people all around us were fighting a war.
When he was 3, little Nico showered affection on our family cat. After dinner, he and that cat would often rush outdoors to play by the church. And then, one warm, dry evening...
Mother, Father, come see my cat's fur. I stroke it. It crackles and sparks. I can make sheets of light come off of his fur.
It's called static electricity, Nicola. I enjoyed watching his fascination.
I loved electricity and shiny things. When inside, I enjoyed watching my mother invent things, mostly kitchen tools, like her handmade mechanical egg beater. I wanted to be an inventor too.
Outside, Nicola discovered having fun playing with our barn animals. Well, all except for one.
Mama!
I warned him. He teased it, taunted it. That barnyard goose became Nico's powerful enemy. It was a monstrous, ugly brute with the mouth of a crocodile and cunning eyes. Nico, I told you what would happen. That goose would hunt for him, charge at him and attack him at the nape of his neck. You must make peace with a gander or it will fight you as long as it lives.
Nico's run-ins with animals included a local wolf, our family cow, and some very large ravens. One time, Nico observed a rooster, sparking his early interest in studying flight. This would later prove disastrous.
When little Nico was 5, he made his own water wheel that turned and pulled to make machines work. He was always making things, like a cornstalk pop gun. At age 9, he invented a propeller-driven creation powered by 16 maybugs glued to wooden blades.
I planned to make a more powerful one with 100 maybugs, but that boy I fish with ate up all the maybugs.
Then there was that time Nico made a special parasol to glide off the barn roof. That laid him up in bed for 6 weeks. Sadly, not long after, his older brother Dane fell off a horse and died. We never got over it, especially Nico, who witnessed it. Dane was our extraordinarily gifted one. When we lost him, Nico became the only boy in our family. Nico grew very quiet after Dane was gone. Some thought he had an illness or was very depressed, or even crazy.
My brother's premature death left both my parents inconsolable. Remembering Dane's successes made my achievements appear dull in comparison. I grew up with little confidence in myself. Mother began to reject me, so I ran away from home and hid in a mountain chapel. Shortly after I returned, Father was appointed to an ornate church in the city. My schooling began. I missed my cat, our chickens and pigeons, but not that goose. At night, I often woke up from nightmares of Dane's death.
Around age 12, Nicola became very ill. Later, he claimed a heavy dose of Mark Twain's writings cured him. Afterwards, I noticed Nicola developed some strange peculiarities.
I had a violent aversion to women's pearl earrings. Pearls would give me a fit. Also, I would get a fever looking at a peach.
It was around this time that Nicola began sharing amazing things happening to him.
Father, whenever someone says a word, I see flashes of light. Then a vision before me. I can't tell if I'm really seeing it or if it's just a vision in my head. Sometimes I see new places, cities and countries, often interrupted with bright light flashes. Sometimes I create things in my mind, even modify them, then write them down.
Nicola often amazed us, remembering everything he saw and read. As he grew older, we noticed, like the rest of the family, Nicola not only had a gifted memory, but great skill with numbers.
I was so good at math, my teacher thought I was cheating. I was not, of course. At 14, I was interested in electricity and I read all I could find about it. I experimented with batteries, induction coils, water turbines, motors, and air pressure. I wanted to create a perpetual motion machine. One time, I saw a photograph of Niagara Falls. I wanted to one day place a gigantic wheel under the falls and harness the energy.
As he grew older and smarter, Nicola developed many interests. Among them, he learned and could speak 8 languages. He also developed quite a sense of humor, telling jokes that made everyone laugh. I wanted him to follow me into the priesthood, but he had other ideas. First came the Polytechnic Institute in Austria, then the University of Budapest.
In my first year, I took 11 courses. After dark, I studied in the candlelight, resting only 2 to 4 hours each night. My health began to suffer. Father worried. In my second year, the university obtained a rare electrical generator that relied on direct current. While being demonstrated, I immediately recognized its major flaw. The machine was limited by the current it used. I suggested to the inventor to get rid of its commutator by using alternating current.
Gentlemen, get your attention, please.
Being challenged by a 22-year-old student didn't sit well with the inventor. I didn't finish my studies there. I kept thinking about how to invent an alternating current generator. Leaving the university, I fell into gambling, cards, billiards, chess. I attracted large crowds with my skills. I bought fancy clothes to impress. I smoked 20 black cigars a day. Gave them up after promising my sister.
His father was not happy to see Nico return home with his many bad habits. The university sent word they had discharged him for his gambling and womanizing. After a while, we re-accepted Nico back into the family.
Once again, Nicola began attending church to hear my sermons. There he met Anna.
Oh, Anna! She was tall and beautiful, with extraordinary, understandable eyes. I fell in love. I delighted in her company. We took strolls by the river, talking about the future.
Our future together will be wonderful.
Anna, I want to become an electrical engineer. I need to advance my studies, so I'm enrolling in the summer term in Prague. I promise I will write to you often.
You'd better. Ha! I want to raise a large family.
I never got around to writing Anna. Eventually, she married another. It was then father died. Without his support, I could not afford to continue. Desperate for food and money, I took a job in Budapest as a draftsman for the Hungarian Central Telegraph Office. While there in my spare time, I designed an invention to amplify sound, a speaker that could be loud. But no one was interested. One evening, while strolling along on my twilight walks along the river, the idea came like a flash of lightning. I drew diagrams with stick and sand. I saw images wonderfully sharp and clear. An alternating current motor. Electricity could then flow one way, then back the other way, like a seesaw. That way, electricity could be used in towns that are 100 miles apart. No one was interested. What to do? I thought of becoming a professor. I could now speak 9 languages. Fortunately, around 1882, I was introduced to Charles Batchelor, Edison's man in Paris. Charles was an Englishman, a natural-born salesman and organizer.
The timing of our meeting was most fortuitous. At Compagnie Continental Edison, I was overseeing Edison's direct current system across Europe, mostly isolated power plants for individual factories, hotels, shipyards, train stations and the like. Of course, the big problem with direct current was limited to low voltage over short distances. This required a power plant every mile or so to light up the city. This presented many logistical problems. I hired Tesla as a junior engineer.
I pitched my idea of alternating current induction motor to Batchelor and others in Paris. Edison's people would not listen. Edison himself believed my system simply would not work.
I remember the first time I saw Tesla. He was doing some experimenting outside Paris, and one day a long, lanky lad came in and said he wanted a job. Oh, he was a great talker and a great eater, too, devouring multiple steaks in one sitting.
Before work, I would rise at 5 a.m. to swim 27 laps at the Seine bathhouse. And in the evenings, I would play billiards with the workers. Meanwhile, in Paris, in 1880, was a magnet for high fashion and the arts. I developed a passion for finely tailored suits, kid leather gloves, leather shoes with spats, and the finest handmade suits. All these strained my meager income. I enjoyed the company of women, but could not compete with the wealthier man.
Tesla became our sort of travelling repairman. He set out to fix the tougher problems with our direct current system, mainly in France and Germany. He often proposed improvements to our system, some which he implemented. Tesla redesigned generators and reinstalled lighting systems, proving his alternating induction motor really worked.
Upon my return, I was shocked to learn that a promised liberal compensation for my innovations was not to be realized.
Nicola, I know you are disillusioned by how Edison's men are treating you. Now listen to me. Please consider moving to America. Work with Edison directly. You could redesign and improve his Edison dynamos and motors. Remember, America is the land of promise. I considered writing Tesla a letter of recommendation to Edison, but I realized they already met in Paris.
Before leaving for America, I spent time with a scientist who showed me all the microscopic organisms living in drinking water. Oh, after that, I made it a practice to shun unpurified water, scour my plates and utensils before eating, and refrain from unsavory restaurants.
So, at the age of 28, my young genius son Nico left Europe for America. He was so tall, thin, with a handsome, refined face, and sporting a mustache. Yet, Nico still looked like an adolescent to me. He promised to write and send money when he could.
You are listening to Every Now and Then Theater with Conejo Players Theater's original radio drama, Nikola Tesla, Mysterious Inventor. I am your radio host, Rachel Reenstra, comedian and TV show host of the nationally acclaimed 4-time Emmy-nominated The Wildlife Docs. Join us now for Act 2, Mysterious Genius meets Menlo Park Wizard.
In 1885, I arrived in the United States with having my ticket, money, and some luggage stolen on my way over. My first impression of New York City? Shocked! It was dangerous, loud, rough, and dirty, and appeared hundreds of years behind the cultured lifestyle of the great European cities. The American stock market had recently crashed. I learned 3 major banks and many companies had gone bankrupt. New immigrants were not always welcome and perceived as taking the few jobs away from Americans.
This is your right hand. You will now raise your right hand and you will repeat after me. You are all now United States citizens. Mazel tov.
I was able to complete my citizenship requirements. My future patent filings would no longer read subject of the Emperor of Austria, but rather as a citizen of the United States. This was a proud moment for me. Now, for the task at hand, to have my first meeting with Mr. Edison, hoping to impress.
Tesla was a pretentious newcomer with wild ideas. He declared his alternating current idea was superior to my direct current system and was the only practical kind of current to use in a power and lighting system. Nonsense, young man. I've already rejected that idea as too dangerous and lacking key elements. Besides, I've already invested my company entirely in the development and sales of direct current. However, I do appreciate your zeal, and I do have a job for you.
I was amazed at this wonderful man who, at only 37, without early advantages and scientific training, had accomplished so much. I decided to once and for all take on the mighty Edison by improving his carbon filament lamp. I made one lamp containing a vacuum, attached a vibrating current, and it glowed brightly. This new light was cool to the touch. In fact, if direct current was abandoned altogether, there would be no need for Edison's invented filament at all. Somehow, my work leaked to the newspapers.
Tesla, you upstart pompous sir.
Mr. Edison, New York Herald. Mr. Edison, would you please comment about the possibility of producing light from electricity without heat?
The feat has been achieved.
I'm specifically referring to discoveries taken up by Nikola Tesla.
It's a problem surrounded by difficulties.
And what about Tesla?
He has made no new discoveries, but has shown considerable ingenuity in increasing vibrations with a coil.
Do you think it will replace your light bulb?
Light without heat may be obtained someday. It may not be a pleasant light, but a ghastly color, more like the light of lightning bugs.
Back in Edison's lab, I made improvements to a few of his inventions, but was hired to do mostly routine repair work to his DC generators. This changed one day when the ship SS Oregon with Edison's generators quit working. He was embarrassed by this and dispatched me. I worked all night fixing them. Edison seemed pleased. One day, I outlined a plan to improve his DC dynamos. Impressed, he promised me $50,000 if I could accomplish this. In 12 months, I designed 24 different types. Edison's financial benefits were enormous. But when I asked for the promised payment...
Tesla, you are still a Parisian. When you become a full-fledged American, you will appreciate an American joke.
It was a painful shock. I had been cheated yet again by Edison. I immediately resigned. Shortly, I was approached by two investors in March of 1885. Together, we founded the Tesla Electric and Manufacturing Company. I even hired away one of Edison's best assistants. Take that, Mr. Edison.
I jumped at the chance of working for Mr. Tesla. Having recently worked for Mr. Edison, I had witnessed many things. Indeed, Mr. Edison could be very stubborn. He was a powerful figure focused on marketing, financial success, and patenting everything he could claim. Or somewhat claim. In contrast, Mr. Tesla seemed commercially out of step, somewhat vulnerable. At first, he seldom acquired patents, possibly for lack of funds to do so. However, I felt he was more focused on far-reaching ideas with better potential, and much more pleasant to work for.
Mr. Tesla is such a hard worker that he has little time for social pleasures. Though polite, he is modest and has no desire to exploit himself. Mr. Tesla has become sort of a folk hero. Tesla promises his invention of a new system of lighting will be more practical illuminant than we have at present. He believes in the possibility of sending vast amounts of electricity along wires from Niagara Falls for miles. Further, he recently prophesied an attempt to transmit intelligible sounds through the earth without wires or cable would soon be attempted and succeed.
Not again!
Stand down, man.
Captain, please do something about that man. He is scaring everybody for blocks with that contraption. Our building shakes and creaks.
It's Tesla again. He's got some turbine invention thing down in that cellar causing all the noise and the shaking. This time, I'm telling him he gets rid of it or he's out on the street.
You told him that the last time, and the time before that.
It took a few days for things to calm down. After that, Mr. Tesla took to working mostly nights.
My new investors charged me with improving arc lighting, which I did. However, they soon backed out, claiming they lost interest. This left me broke. A bit later, I discovered they stole my work, claiming it was their own. 2 years later, after some menial labor jobs, I reformed the Tesla Electric Company in New York with new investors. We filed many patents.
Back assisting Mr. Tesla, I quickly observed a trait he apparently inherited from his father. Mr. Tesla would often talk to himself, carrying on conversations in different voice tones. I overheard him utter his mother's letters, telling of his sisters all marrying good priests and were now bearing children. Mr. Tesla? Mr. Tesla! Sir? Do you need something?
Just thinking. I mentioned I've often seen flashes of light, followed by visions of things. My theorizing, it might be caused by a reflection action from the brain onto the excited retina. If so, it should be possible to project on the screen the image of the object one conceives, a sort of moving picture. I am convinced this will be accomplished in time.
As time passed, I noticed little quirks and habits. Mr. Tesla counted his steps everywhere he went, including his 10-mile walks around New York City. When eating, he calculated the cubical contents of soup plates, coffee cups, and pieces of food. His counting had to be divisible by 3 or he'd start over. During lightning storms, he raised the shades so he could be inspired by the flashes of light. One day, he gave up drinking coffee and tea. On another day, he told me he gave up womanizing. He had a rigid theory about this.
To be a great inventor, one must truly not allow himself to be distracted by love.
What about marriage?
Marriage is for an artist and a musician, a writer, but not an inventor. Those 3 gain inspiration from women's influence and love. But inventors have intense natures. To give to themselves to love would take everything away from their chosen field. Besides, there is too much competition for women by so many men.
But surely, sir.
The most enduring works of achievement have come from the childless man. I do not think you can name many great inventions that have been made by married man.
We never spoke of marriage again, although I noticed he threw his loving attention into those Bryant Park pigeons, occasionally feeding them. Odd for a man who feared germs. Once Mr. Tesla brought a wounded pigeon home and invented a wing brace to help it heal. When the pigeon mended, it flew off.
I often searched for that pigeon, but never found it. I would return to work, spotted with pigeon droppings.
Mr. Tesla would shuffle into the lab, handing me his coat and hat to clean. Not my favorite task. He preferred all of us neat and clean.
Miss, just what is it that you're wearing? I have a banker errand for you. You cannot wear this as my secretary for this errand.
Mr. Tesla? Sir, it's the latest fashion.
That monstrosity of a gown? How can you be such a slave to fashion? Go home and change, then return for my errand.
Yes, Mr. Tesla. Right away, Mr. Tesla.
All of us staff felt this a bit odd, since Mr. Tesla was such a fashionable dresser himself. He did explain later, he wanted to project a somewhat financially needy image to bankers and investors.
These were great days. With a larger workshop and more staff, I made countless discoveries and designed many inventions. I was perfecting my alternating current induction motor. Exactly what my university professor said could never be done.
Being a poor sleeper, Mr. Tesla began taking what he called electric baths, or his cooling baths. Using a careful process, he ran millions of volts per second through and around his body. Tesla found these treatments to be exhilarating, cleansing, and claimed many health benefits. Word got out, attracting potential investors. One such person was Mark Twain.
I believe there's a great market for your electric bath apparatus in Europe. Would it be all right if I could sell your electrotherapy machines to rich widows in Europe?
Yes, that would be acceptable. I have another device here that might help them digest their meals.
Oh, wonderful. How does this work?
This contraption consists of a platform supported on elastic cushions that are made to oscillate by compressed air. I step on the platform and the oscillation stimulates powerful peristaltic movements.
Can I have that in English?
Here, step on this platform. Hold this metal ball. Throw the switch.
Mr. Tesla, shouldn't you tell him about...
Shh. I want to have some fun with him. Throw the switch.
Oh, this is delightful. It's vibrating. I tingle all over. Oh, it gives such vigor and vitality.
You'd better stop now or risk the consequences.
Not by a jugful. I'm enjoying myself. Well, quick, Mr. Tesla, where is it?
Right over there, sir.
You could have told him. The strong effect is well known around the lab staff.
Yes, this device does have a powerful laxative effect. Meanwhile, I completed my entire alternating current system and quickly moved to patent it. In 1888, I was granted 5 more patents covering various versions. A year later, 18 more patents. I was finally on my way.
Sir, this newfound fame is all well and good, except, Mr. Tesla, you're still not very good at commercializing your inventions. I worry.
That is a problem that can be postponed.
Mr. George Westinghouse here to see you, sir. Please come in, Mr. Westinghouse.
Mr. Tesla, a pleasure, sir. I'm here to complete our negotiations for licensing your alternating current system patents. Now, my offer is this: $20,000 in cash, $50,000 in Westinghouse stock, plus a $2.50 royalty per horsepower on every Tesla motor, with a $5,000 minimum paid in royalties the first year, $10,000 the second, and $15,000 the third. And now, I feel this is a bit high, but if yours is the only practical method for operating an alternating current motor, then it's worth the price. Besides, I can pass the cost on to the users.
I accept your offer, Mr. Westinghouse.
Ah, well done, sir. Shall we shake on it?
You'll have to forgive me, George. I have a bit of a phobia about such things.
Oh, I understand, sir. Regardless, I have great plans for the both of us. Nothing short of the electrification of the Chicago World's Fair, the Columbian Exposition to be exact. This will be a glorious showcase for us, and the beginning of riches for both of us. You do realize this will put us at odds with Thomas Edison, who's also bidding with his direct current system.
It was quite the bidding war. George Westinghouse versus Thomas Edison. Westinghouse walked away with the Chicago World's Fair contract. Edison was so unhappy at losing the fair contract, he immediately began creating problems.
George, read this telegram from Edison. He's calling me a pompous Serb. And here, see what he calls you? And here, he's refusing to give you a license to manufacture his Edison light bulbs. We need at least 92,000 bulbs for the fair.
Well, I anticipated something like this. I had my engineers create stopper lamps, a bit inferior to Edison's, but a sufficient substitute.
Chicago's 1893 World's Fair was 700 acres lasting 6 months, displaying 60,000 exhibitors, welcoming more than 27 million visitors at 50 cents apiece. Vice President Morton officially opened the fair that morning. 2 attractions were immediate crowd pleasers. One is a 250-foot giant wheel by George Ferris with 36 boxcars attached to hold passengers. Another diversion is a dancer calling herself Little Egypt, doing a hoochie coochie dance. She shocks the women. That evening, Westinghouse invited President Grover Cleveland to do the evening honors.
Mr. President, press this gold and ivory telegraph key. Our 2,000 horsepower generators will erupt the fair into a city of white light. Oh, it was glorious. Immediately, the American flag ran up a mast, and the drapery on a statue of Lady Liberty flew aside. We explored the glistening white buildings of classic Greek style. We discovered Chester French's sculpture Republic, some self-service restaurants called cafeterias, and Adolph Coors' prize-winning Golden Select beer served with a caramel corn treat called Cracker Jack.
The glistening light, of course, was us harnessing Niagara, made possible by my rotating magnetic field generator. A great achievement, but a monetary gain was not an end. Providing cheap power for the masses was my goal. Seeing our generators in action gives me fresh hope that my fondest dreams can come true. The transmission of power from one station to another without wires. Imagine no need for millions of telephone poles, no need for tons of copper wire, no need for enormous amounts of rubber for insulation, no need for all the repairmen.
Coming to visit Mr. Tesla at the fair, I found it to be a chaotic circus. There was Westinghouse with their 45-foot electrically lit tower, General Electric with their megalithic 82-foot lit-up tower, and others trying to outdo each other. There were so many inventors, including Alexander Bell's telephone transmitting voice via light beams, and Edison with all his gadgets.
Nearby, my own exhibitor display was inside a spacious hall. I lit a gas discharge lamp wirelessly using alternating current. I held up the light bulbs that glowed magnificently. I began attracting large crowds. The fair was becoming a great success for Westinghouse and me. Edison was so angry. Next, I attracted even larger crowds with my apparent daring feat of passing 1 million volts of electricity through my body. It amazed everyone.
New York Herald, Mr. Tesla, how does it feel to send hundreds of thousands of volts through your body?
If you are safely prepared for the shock, as I am, on this platform of hard rubber, the effect on the nerves is nearly not as great. But I must be safely prepared, or running this many volts through your body would instantly kill you.
For the next 2 years, we worked on with great joy in our New York workshop. But the strain on him was showing. He grew pale. Although over 6 feet tall, he kept his weight right at 142 pounds, deliberately reducing eating and sleep time to work more. Meanwhile, Edison was teaming up with Marconi. Other rivals were pirating Mr. Tesla's induction motor and oscillators. Regardless, Mr. Tesla was moving forward with his wireless radio experiments. Finally, he was ready to show his work by renting space and putting up a large portable pool inside Madison Square Garden. Many military dignitaries came that day.
Now, gentlemen, to show you how wireless technology can be used to command ships and missiles from a distance, watch as I command my model ship in any direction I choose. One evening, at a holiday party, I met and dined with the great naturalist John Muir. He seemed intrigued with my explanation of renewable energy from the Earth.
Mr. Tesla, sir, I believe we share similar ideas about preserving Earth's natural properties. I would be honored to tour your lab, sir.
After witnessing a few inventions, he smiled and shook his head.
From what I can see and understand here, your work seeks to utilize renewable energy and minimize destruction of natural resources. In this pursuit, sir, we share a common end indeed.
In my view, sir, your writings remain a most powerful statement to the spiritual path.
Then a few days later, tragic sadness. Mr. Tesla had just finished up details for powering Niagara Falls to transmit electricity over long distances when it happened.
My laboratory burned to the ground. Gone were all my experiments, equipment, notebooks, and my dreams. The timing was terrible.
Having beaten out Edison on the Chicago Fair contract, Tesla and I had become Edison's arch rivals. His reaction to our success was immediate. Edison printed pamphlets mailed to reporters and lighting utilities, accusing me and all his competitors of violating his patents. He also pushed the idea that alternating current was dangerous, and his direct current voltage system was safer. The war of electric currents was on. Most of this was not visible nor understandable to the general public.
Ha! To be clear, Edison did not invent electric light, just a long-lasting filament. And I proved his filament isn't even necessary by attaching a vibrating, alternating current to a vacuum bulb that glowed brightly and cooled to the touch.
Yes, you did, which only infuriated Edison to step up his attacks on us.
What Edison did next was pure cruelty and meanness. Some men had accidentally electrocuted themselves on power poles. Edison told the press alternating current was dangerous and to blame. To further prove his point, he arranged for Topsy, the elephant at Coney Island, to be electrocuted using alternating current.
There were many more Edison attempts to discredit alternating current as dangerous. Many dog electrocutions, plus promoting outdated methods of prisoner execution with electrocution. Despite these gruesome acts, enhanced by Edison's public relations attempts to discredit alternating current, the winner was clearly Westinghouse and my alternating current commercialized by us.
We had won the war of electric currents, but there were more wars to come.
It was about this time that even Mr. Tesla knew he needed to rest a bit. Newspaper writer Robert Underwood Johnson invited Mr. Tesla to his home in the middle of the Christmas season for a dinner party to meet other well-known figures of the day, like mayoral candidate Theodore Roosevelt, John Muir, Mark Twain, Rudyard Kipling, along with famous actors and composers.
I was immediately taken by Johnson's wife, Catherine, a striking woman of Irish descent, captivating eyes, poised, with shoulders swept back, head erect, youthful, with just a touch of gray hair.
I was instantly enthralled by Tesla. Some might say mesmerized by this Serbian Superman's many stories. You are overworked, Mr. Tesla, and you should take a holiday. Perhaps a good Christmas meal will keep you going through the first few months of the year.
I get all the nourishment I require from my laboratory. I know I am completely worn out, and yet I cannot stop my work. These experiments of mine are so important, so beautiful, so fascinating. I can hardly tear myself away to eat or sleep.
Dare I ask, might it be possible for my husband and I to actually, maybe, possibly...
Let us go there for our dessert.
Excellent! We're off to the magician's den.
Now then, Catherine, you sit here. Robert, you right here. Be prepared for a surprise or two.
My, so many lit up colorful signs and devices flashing about. Some seem mystical and iridescent. Electrical bombardment all around us, and yet we remain unscathed. Amazing, sir.
Next day in our lab, Mr. Tesla seemed giddy. A few days later, Mrs. Catherine Johnson sent a bouquet in honor of Serbian Christmas.
My dear Robert, I have to thank your Mrs. Johnson for the most magnificent flowers. I have never received flowers before, and they produced upon me a curious effect.
Well, that started it. Mr. Tesla became a regular at the Johnsons' dinner parties. He would reciprocate by taking them out for concerts. And he became a sought-after dinner guest at many of Manhattan's glittering homes. This left me alone cleaning up messes from the day's lab work. Normally, we'd both do that while discussing the day's work. To me, it was obvious that Catherine Johnson viewed my boss as more than a man. He was an icon of historical importance, a trophy to display before her lady friends.
Today we were invited again to witness his experiments. Electrical vibrations, lightning-like flashes of 15 feet. His tubes of electric light were used to make photographic souvenirs for me, Mark Twain, and many of us. Mr. Tesla told Mark Twain that his books had saved his life when he was a boy of 12, struck down with malaria. Mark Twain wept.
Catherine is becoming too intense. Whenever Robert leaves the room, her overt flirtations increase. She claims a telepathic link to me. Each time she sees me, seems to ignite her passions. I must withdraw whenever Robert leaves the room.
Although Mr. Tesla would claim he wasn't, I knew Catherine was one of a few women he was quietly seeing on a regular basis. Some married, some not. During this time, I was alarmed about Mr. Tesla's experiments with a machine that made what he called shadowgraphs, or X-rays. He took pictures of skulls and hands, sometimes falling asleep while experimenting with the rays. Later, he would refer to pain in the center of his forehead. I noted a hurtful inflammation and blistering on his skin.
When Edison's X-ray experiment nearly cost him his eyesight, it was then I understood the risks. I began warning that protection from radiation exposure was necessary.
You are listening to Every Now and Then Theater with Caneo Players Theater's original radio drama, Nikola Tesla, Mysterious Genius, and TV show host of the 4-time Emmy-nominated, nationally acclaimed The Wildlife Docs. Join us now for Act 3, Colorado Springs and the Italian Distraction.
Although I found 1895 New York life exciting, I had no time for that now. After my lab fire, I stopped work on everything while re-establishing my laboratory capabilities. The following year, X-rays were efficiently discovered. Shortly after, Edison announced a device that let him see through 2 men. A week later, I announced my device let me see through 3 men. Edison said to the press laughingly, "Let's stop at 3, shall we?" We called the pictures shadowgraphs. During that time, not known to me, something very sneaky was happening. Several others were copying my work and claiming it as their own. Coleman kept it from me for a time, as not to distract my work.
My boss developed radio, not Marconi. As far back as 1891, Mr. Tesla had begun research into messages that could be transmitted wirelessly. He investigated transmission of electromagnetic energy without wires, in effect, building the first radio transmitter. In 1893, he demonstrated his idea at lectures in St. Louis and Philadelphia. While others contributed to the idea before and after Mr. Tesla's work, it was my boss providing the fundamental principles and patents, plus his work was widely publicized.
I did not want to be distracted, but my New York laboratory was too confining. So, in June 1899, with a $30,000 stake from Colonel John Jacob Astor, owner of the lavish Waldorf Astoria Hotel where I was residing, I moved my research to a small building in the foothills outside Colorado Springs. These afforded me both solitude and space. Here I could perfect my wireless energy principles. Dear Coleman, Being over a mile above sea level, Colorado Springs is one of the most active lightning strike areas in the United States. I have promised the nearby city free electric power from my newly built alternating current distribution system. I am using my lightning studies to begin building several apparatuses. Had an incident. Studying my lightning research notes carefully, I predicted nearby lightning storm would reach me and strike in 48.5 seconds. And right at 48, it did it. Exactly 48.5 seconds, knocking my building off its foundation and me off mine. Windows and a door demolished. What a mess! I was thrilled. I now believe it is possible to transmit electric energy through the Earth, thus dispensing with all artificial conductors. I found the Earth to be literally alive with electrical vibrations. Dear Coleman, took a bit to rebuild things. I need you up here. My work's main focus into wireless transmission has made it clear. It is practical to send telegraphic messages any distance without wires, and also faint modulation of human voice any distance without loss. I have an experiment planned.
Mr. Tesla! Mr. Tesla!
Yes, you there, young lady. Your question, please.
This metal fence, the tall mast to the sky with the gleaming copper ball on top of it. Just what exactly are you hoping to accomplish with all this?
All of you. I am going to transmit radio signal wirelessly from here to Pikes Peak, and then traveling from Pikes Peak to my man in Paris. I can tune the transmitter to respond to specific signals while rejecting others to avoid the intercept of signals from others.
Is this dangerous? Should we...
Coleman, throw the switch now.
Oh my God! Look at that! It's terrifying! Streaks of bright blue lightning shooting out of that copper ball. The ground is shaking. It's so dark. When the furious inventor Nikola Tesla called up the Colorado Springs powerhouse to complain about having his power cut off, he discovered the entire city had lost power. Tesla's demonstration knocked the city's generator offline and set it on fire. The city has announced that they are charging Tesla for all the free electricity he had promised, plus damages. When reached for comment, Tesla said he was both elated by his experiment and dejected by how he's being treated. He plans to return to New York.
For years, Mr. Tesla had been mostly unaware of a copycat Italian. Guglielmo Marconi had read about Mr. Tesla's work. He began working on modifications to an earlier apparatus in an effort to create transmitters and receivers. Back in 1896, Marconi went public with his device. Right away, those in the know reacted.
You stole from Tesla's patents. Admit it.
That's the same thing Tesla came up with.
Marconi, you were a thief.
I did no such thing. This is my own work. I have received a British patent for a radio transmission and receiving system. I have invented radio.
Finally returning to New York in 1900, Coleman informed me of Marconi's expropriation of my hard-earned discoveries. My anger was building. But I decided to take the Italian to task later. I made a new plan. I wanted to build and broadcast under multiple wavelengths from one single station. Also around this time, I began to envision and draw plans for a new type of flying machine, which would raise and lower vertically, then drive off horizontally. But building a broadcast tower took my focus.
Mr. Tesla raised venture capital funds, including $150,000 from industrialist J. Pierpont Morgan. Next, Mr. Tesla received 200 acres on Long Island. He began working on the facility and tower and hired an architect. Named Wardenclyffe, it was an odd-looking tower, nearly 200 feet high with a big ball up top about 70 feet in diameter. Many design issues developed due to size. The Colorado Springs structure was a tiny miniature compared to Wardenclyffe. Funds were quickly used up. Morgan was not pleased with more requests for an idea that may not give a return on investment. The site had become more expensive to build than either Tesla or Morgan had anticipated.
Morgan, please. Wardenclyffe will provide lucrative commercial exploitation of wireless communication around the globe and free energy resources for everyone. You must understand.
Free? What I do understand is this is now 1904. That financial panic of 1901 severely strained any money for continuing wireless work or anything else. Now understand this. I and others have no more funds to give you.
Mr. George Westinghouse to see you?
Good to see you, George. What's on your mind?
I'll get right to it. My bankers won't help me start a new company unless our royalty agreement is canceled. I know you're out of funds. Let's remove the royalty fee for a set of buyouts of your patents. This will give you an influx of cash.
Well, that's all right as long as I have enough money to continue with the experiments. So, agreed.
I overheard that and knew it to be a bad decision. But our funding was too tight just then. Wardenclyffe was to be the start of Mr. Tesla's world wireless system. These were dark and moody times for Mr. Tesla. Word got to him that Marconi was awarded a patent for the invention of radio. Mr. Tesla tried to sue, but nothing came of it. Then one day he just seemed to collect himself and we started working again. To save money, Mr. Tesla lived in a tiny room at Wardenclyffe. I came out when I could. Finally, after a few years with all funds exhausted, the 185-foot tower sat empty. By 1917, in the heat of World War I, strong rumors circulated that the tower was being used by German spies for radio communication. With that, the federal government ordered the tower blown up.
After Wardenclyffe, I did manage to get several radio towers built with a new company set up on Long Island. However, my new involvement was reduced to design aspects. I began to concern myself with other inventions and ideas.
Mr. Tesla threw himself into working on many inventions. He was beginning to note the public's fascination with him and his fame was fading away. But he could always draw a pack of reporters nearly every year.
Gentlemen, glad to see more lady reporters these days. Today is my 78th birthday. Today I announce I've come up with my most important invention that will cause armies of millions to drop dead in their tracks. It is a military weapon that shoots high-velocity beams of mercury particles inside a vacuum chamber at 48 times the speed of sound. Such tremendous energy will bring down a fleet of 10,000 enemy airplanes at a distance of 250 miles.
Is this a death ray?
No, it is a peace beam. It is designed to foil the enemies and invading armies. It will save lives. I've already partially tested it.
Save lives by killing?
It saves lives by acting like an invisible Chinese wall. Only 1,000,000 times more impenetrable. I offered it to the US first, but so far, only the Soviet Union has shown any interest.
After our interview, true to his reclusive reputation, Mr. Tesla withdrew. Always a lifelong advocate of exercise and good nutrition, it is surprising to note that he seems in failing health. Ghostly pale, beanpole thin, and walking very slowly. His detractors labeled Tesla as a visionary deceived by the flash of shooting stars. And yet this kindly, now frail soul has captured the imagination of the world. His professional brethren have come to realize that Tesla has seen farther into the future than anyone. He dreams with perceptive imagination, leading to one discovery after another.
You're listening to Every Now and Then Theater with Conejo Players Theater's original radio drama, Nikola Tesla, Mysterious Genius. I am still your radio host, Rachel Reenstra, comedian and TV show host of the 4-time Emmy-nominated, nationally acclaimed The Wildlife Docs. Join us now for our final act, Beyond the Grave Conspiracies.
During his career, Nikola Tesla developed numerous inventions that changed the world. On one day, he could be a cultured gentleman showing off his lightsabers and building rattling oscillators. On the next day, he'd be the reclusive scientist behind locked laboratory doors for days on end with very little sleep.
In 1943, in the midst of World War II, just months before the Supreme Court upheld his original patent, giving him credit for inventing radio, Nikola Tesla died in a lonely two-room hotel suite, broke and nearly forgotten.
Since his death, Nikola Tesla has become the quintessential mad scientist and cult figure. Claims of wonderful and crazy inventions persist to this day. Scientists still pore over his notes, hoping to understand how he intended an invention to work. Perhaps the most famous of these is his death ray particle beam that could destroy 10,000 airplanes at a distance of 250 miles. Tesla's particle beam work is the basis for HAARP, the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, which supposedly could shoot down enemy aircraft. According to the military, this Alaska-based program is supposedly used only to improve communication reliability.
Of course, the U.S. military did utilize Tesla's particle beam research to develop a megawatt-class chemical oxygen iodine laser mounted inside a modified Boeing 747 YAL-1 aircraft. It was primarily designed as a missile defense system to destroy tactical ballistic missiles from places like Iran. Nicknamed America's first lightsaber, the aircraft-mounted laser cannon turret revolved to fire from any desired direction.
Tower to Lightsaber 1, target missile is away, over.
Tracking target now, Tower. Target locked. Engaging target.
Tower to Lightsaber 1, test successful. Congratulations, crew. Return to base.
Roger that, Tower. Returning to base.
In 2010, the 747 Airborne Laser Weapon Program was defunded. Or was it? Hearing of the Soviet Union's use of Tesla's work for a guided missile program, in retaliation, President Reagan announced plans for a Star Wars defense system. To this day, rumors persist about Star Wars being operational, circling the Earth.
In 1943, when Nikola Tesla supposedly died of natural causes at the age of nearly 87, everyone was suspicious of everyone. Fears of infiltrating spies were, of course, routine, and under the dubious authority of the U.S. Justice Department's Alien Property Custodian Office claiming jurisdiction, Tesla's key papers and trunks in his workshop and in his private room were impounded. Now, since Tesla had become a naturalized citizen 50 years before, well, these actions seemed odd. One might say more odd than Tesla. Tesla conspiracy theories continued, and now one is that Tesla was murdered by Nazi spies to gain access to his inventions and patents so that they could be weaponized. Another was about Tesla discovering how to deliver free energy to everyone on the planet. So the question would be, where is this free energy? Conspiracy theorists point to the few people with political and corporate power that might not want us to have this free energy. Maybe think of that next time you pay your utility bill. Perhaps the life of Nikola Tesla was best summed up by Tesla himself.
Let the future tell the truth and evaluate each one according to his work and accomplishments. The present is theirs. The future, for which I really worked, is mine.
You've been listening to Every Now and Then Theater and Caneo Player Theater's production of Nikola Tesla Mysterious Genius. The ensemble cast featured Bob Allen, Jim Barker, Andy Braisted, Abigail Cluster, Bob Decker, Jim and Judy Diederich, Olivia Hewlett, Keith Hurt, Maria Lang, Laura Marsh, Lauren Marsters, Gloria Palma, David Parmenter, Rachel Reenstra, Robert Staback, Risha Toomey, Bob West, James Ortman, and Monty Yvonne. On-site audio engineering was David Toomey. Post-audio producer was Bob Allen. Co-director and casting coordinator was Jim Diederich. Script producer and co-director was me, James M. Wortman. Special thanks to Tom Spence and Bob Allen at Gold Coast Broadcasting Broadcasting, Caneo Player Theater's board, Maria Lang, Barker Ductions, oh that name, our listeners and supporters, and all the rest. You know who you are. Nikola Tesla, Mysterious Genius is a copyrighted production with all rights reserved worldwide. No part of the script or broadcast may be reproduced, broadcast, or stored in a retrieval system in any form for profit or not without the express written consent of the copyright holder.
I'm your host, Rachel Reenstra, and if you did enjoy the show, please call or email the station and let them know. And from all of us to all of you, go invent something.